Mount Stewart is cast in shape and form as light dims the surrounding sky.
What a gorgeous place to be. Great views.
We can see a new day coming, changing the face of the Alpine Lakes wilderness.
It's really a unique piece of real estate. There's more than 700 small lakes interspersed with high rock peaks and timbered valleys straddling both sides of the Cascades Range. It really is a special piece of mountain. Its proximity to so many people makes it a natural magnet.
This place gets crowded?
Well, we're not comfortable with the amount of use and the damage that's being done now.
It's important to recognize that this nation used to be all wilderness, and we now have just these few little remnant places that are wilderness. And if we lose these, we don't have anything left.
Hi, I'm Romeyn. Stay with us as we experience Washington's Alpine Lakes wilderness in Where It's Wild, an Explorer Series adventure in Romeyn's domain. The Alpine Lakes wilderness lies between Stevens and Snoqualmie Pass in the central Cascades. Its acreage is measured in hundreds of thousands.
72176, bye, Doug.
Its square miles fill up nearly 1% of the state map.
You ready, Daryl?
And its mountains will leave you gasping for air.
Nice.
We've come to ski the wild side, dropping in on the Alpine Lakes like few people dare to.
You kind of have to watch yourself, you know, because nobody's going to bail you out if you get caught up in the avalanche being stupid.
All right, guys, head it up.
We're 4 miles in from Snoqualmie Pass off the Pacific Crest Trail.
Couldn't have picked a much better day for this, that is for sure.
Just a group of Spokane skiers out to try a little Cascade concrete.
You know, it's one of the few places left, and you can really just get out, and you're out here in the wilderness the way that God made it.
Todd Crossett, Nick Salisbury, and Gene Black are all experienced skiers using backcountry gear to scale the slope.
All right.
It's hard work.
Oh.
That builds an appreciation for the place we venture into.
One thing about this area is you just always have to be thinking, and most people around don't want to always be thinking about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and in the long run, this can be your life or your death.
I'd like to see people understand that they really don't belong in this environment, and neither does their garbage.
Our intention is to pack out what we packed in, leaving only tracks behind.
Todd, rip it up! You know, if you're going to be here, you might as well clean up after yourself. Your mom's not here, is she?
Can't catch much air out here today. This isn't for everyone, but it's a lot of fun.
I like it because not too many people out here. I mean, I don't see anybody but us out here today.
It's a different story in the summer months.
Alpine Lakes is famous. Last time I was up here, there were a lot of people from all over. There were people here from New York, from Ohio, from Utah, from Nevada. There were some people, there was a guy from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Judy Frazier sees man and beast alike as a longtime backcountry ranger.
Right here by the trailhead, I was kind of surprised to see it. But there are quite a few up by Ramparts.
Last year when you guys went.
She's used to the flood of folks heading out on their favorite field trip.
And we're also going to climb Mount something.
Yeah. Close to 1 million people visited the Alpine Lakes in 1991, making it one of the country's most heavily used wilderness areas.
It's pretty accessible up here.
We like to reach people even before they begin their trip so that they can pack in a way that they will have minimum impact on the land. More folks that want to come in.
Judy and fellow rangers Tad and Amy Buford are taking us up the trail to Rampart Lakes to see what's become of a wilderness overrun.
We let the guys go farther, but we're just in for relaxing, not torturing ourselves.
Sound of water, it's great.
We pass more than a dozen hiking parties on the way in.
There's a lot of litter.
There is? Where?
All along our trail.
Okay.
And the crowd doesn't thin much once we arrive.
It's fun to camp and set up a tent and cook on a fire.
We hiked in yesterday.
Uh-huh.
We're just set up over here.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, we picked up our guidebook and to see which lakes were the best to go to.
That kind of publicity and the crowds that follow are changing the face of the Alpine Lakes.
Make an effort to stay on rock there rather than step on vegetation. This is a really pretty little area. The sad thing is that it's been very heavily impacted. See, this creates a problem because not only do you have a loss of vegetation and a loss of the visual aspect of things, but you also have the potential for soil erosion into the lake and water pollution.
It seems as if nature is succumbing to the pressure of people.
Holy cow.
An illegal campfire here, trampled ground there, and neon tents everywhere, compromising wilderness values in a land supposedly untouched by man.
Every little bit hurts, and it's really important that everybody who comes out here does their absolute best to minimize their impact and to leave no trace. Ooh, a piece of orange bubble gum. We want people to be able to go out into the wilderness and feel like it's wild, feel like they're on their own, feel like there's a little bit of danger there, feel like they have to make decisions without somebody holding their hand, feel like they might be the only person that's ever been there before.
So the Forest Service is faced with a challenge. What should be done to put the wild back in wilderness?
We have to think about our children and our children's children and their children. In some cases up here, I feel like we really are in a numbers game, and so we need to find ways of cutting down on the number of people that are up here. Permits are one of the options that we're considering.
That's not a totally new idea for the Alpine Lakes. A permit system controlling use has been in place in the Enchantment area of this vast wilderness for a few years now. We'll go there next to see how the concept is working.
Freedom is a real part of the wilderness experience. How do you tell somebody they can't come to this lake, that it's overused, but could you please go to a different lake? I mean, it's really, really hard to do.
This is incredibly sad, Daryl. Somebody picked these flowers and just dropped them here, and every one of those flowers will not produce a seed source, and it won't be a thing of beauty for the next person that comes along. We're losing the wildflowers that we all treasure. We're losing the views. We're losing the water purity. We have a lot of problems, and they're not isolated, and they're not minor. They're widespread, and they are significant.
That's gorgeous.
What a fun thing to do to have dinner up here.
Yeah, it's time to head back.
So we bid farewell to our dinner guest, put on our packs, and head for a deep sleep in this land of enchantment.
Good night, Annapurna.
Alpenglow on the high peaks greet the morning riser. It's a cold granite landscape we step out into. After breakfast, our group of 4 becomes 3, as Jake Lodato has an appointment to keep back in town.
I hate to leave.
The trails leading in and out of the Enchantments are well worn. People were overrunning the place until 4 years ago, when the Forest Service began a permit system to control use.
In 1964, there was only like 500 users per year in the Enchantments. In 1978, there was like 50,000. So I can remember coming in and just, hard time finding a camp spot, toilet paper spread everywhere, campsites filled, tents everywhere you look. And, it wasn't an isolation experience by any means.
Greg Shannon's been coming to experience fall in the Enchantments for 15 years, long before his work brought him here to oversee the high country.
That's what makes the basin kind of unique, that's compacted with one little lake and this little bench and then another lake and another bench. There's about 8 major lakes with, numbers of little tarns and little ponds. people just love to wander around up and down the drainages, and the waterfalls and the little ponds are just a real attraction to people.
You like the smoking? They do. They smell so good.
So where are you guys camped at?
We're camped by Leprechaun.
On the peninsula?
It's easy to see why the Enchantments exert a pull on people. It's a little harder to get a permit to be here.
They figure they cut the use down by 2/3 with the permit system.
I think it's a great idea. It was nice to not see things ripped up and kind of try to pick out the campsites because they weren't all that obvious other than a flat spot for a tent, but it didn't look real used. It's beautiful.
The permit system starts in Leavenworth, in the Leavenworth Ranger District, March 1st, and that's when we receive applications for admittance to the permit area from June 15th to October 15th of every year. And so if you were a hiker that wanted to come into the Enchantments the first weekend of July, you would fill out an application or stop by the office and say, these are the dates that I want to go, and then you would pay $1 per day per person to make that advance reservation. 75% of the permits are by advance reservation, if that's the case. And then the other 25% are kind of a first-come lottery system. Every morning the Ranger District has kind of a drawing in the morning if there's people that want to come into the Enchantments.
So you're guaranteed to not run into too many people.
20 people a day can hike in, with a maximum of 60 campers in the core area at any one time. Like it or not, the permit system is giving the land and its creatures a break from the crowd.
And I think I've seen the goat population increase, and I've seen the ptarmigan population increase, and some of the social trails are healing.
It's a healing experience just to be here. It's Golden Week, that time in early fall when the larch turn color. So we asked Greg, wife Kathy, and their friend Kathy Lodato to show us around. To keep the Enchantments as pristine as possible, the Forest Service has put in primitive toilets and closed the area to campfires.
Some of these stumps are all wind-blown. There's like sculptures, so I'd be kind of ashamed to be burning those up.
Now, the question is whether regulations and permits that control the crowds here are needed or necessary in lesser-known areas of the wilderness, where overuse itself is a new idea.
As wilderness managers, you don't want to keep running from hotspot to hotspot. You want to deal with a problem before it appears on the ground.
So the Forest Service is developing a list of 10 options for controlling use in the entire Alpine Lakes wilderness. We'll travel down to the lowlands to find out what they are.
Boy, the weather's looking great.
I'm Bob Steer. I work with the Forest Service at the Leavenworth Ranger District, and I'm the team leader for the analysis that's looking at ways to reduce recreational impacts on the Alpine Lakes wilderness. We really feel that education alone won't be adequate to deal with the problem. This past field season, we had close to 1 million visits to the Alpine Lakes wilderness. You could equate that to about 20 Bloomsday runs every year going into an area which by definition is supposed to be an area of the earth and its community which is untrammeled by man. When you look at this problem, you can basically do two things. You can accept the existing numbers and try to reduce each person's impact on the wilderness, just having more and more restrictions all the time. For example, no campfires, or no camping in certain areas, or not allowing dogs in the wilderness. All those kind of restrictions would be ways to reduce folks' impacts once they're there. Now, the other main thing we can do is just try to reduce the number of visits to the wilderness as a way to reduce impacts. And the different ways we can reduce the visits is through one, providing other recreational opportunities outside the wilderness for folks to go to. A second way we could do that would be to actually make it more difficult to access the wilderness, perhaps move some of the trailheads back to make it a more difficult hike into the wilderness. And a third way to reduce numbers is through a permit system. One would just require a permit for overnight and day users in the entire wilderness, and we'd block the wilderness into zones and would let so many folks into a specific zone every day. Then once they were in, they'd be free to go wherever they want and stay as long as they want. Some of the other permit options we're looking at would be ones that designate a specific campsite that you would be permitted to go to each day, and that would require you to plan your trip night by night, and you would be assigned certain campsites to be in. Another permit alternative would just have permits required in our very most heavily used areas, and the rest of the wilderness would not have permits on them. And then I think our last permit alternative is one where we would just permit the overnight use. When we went to the public, as we started this process, many folks told us that they wanted to maintain their spontaneity as far as getting into the wilderness, and then once there, they wanted to maintain their freedom. So I guess the trade-off is, if we allow increased numbers, the only way to reduce the impacts is basically to increase the restrictions. If we're able to reduce the numbers in one way or another that enter, then we're able not to have so many restrictions applied.
Any way you look at it, there are changes ahead for the way we use the Alpine Lakes wilderness. And it's only a matter of time before what happens here happens in other popular recreation areas.
If you look at the way that the whole state is growing, not just Puget Sound, but also the Spokane area, I think you're right, is that it is a tip of the iceberg.
Waptus Lake sits stunningly still late on a summer afternoon. It's the season when people surge to see the shores of Spectacle Lake sparkle in the sun. And why not? These mountains are here for all to see. But if you want solitude guaranteed, pack up and head in after the snow sets in. This peaceful picture from Peat Lake is nothing but a put-on. We soon find the forest steams with the thought that someone might come to know its late season side. So we must pass beneath the high priest of peaks, cross the Cascade Current, and slog through the snow. Only then will we reach our high campsite on Escondido Ridge.
Come on. It's gonna be dark by the time we get there.
It's a great spot, though, up here.
Morning brings endless sky and a face-to-face meeting with the parade of peaks along the Pacific Crest. They're all here: Lima, the Overcoat, Chimney Rock, with Summit Chief rising to the north. And if the mountains aren't massive enough, the finest of crystal detail gleams in icy suspension.
Well, I better get going over to Summit, Chief, if we're gonna make it today. Hey, girl. Come on, little boy.
The donkeys need some encouragement to plow through the hardpack up here. We're in too deep to turn back now. One of the beauties of Escondido Ridge are its subalpine openings. You can wander at will, as long as time and energy allow.
A lot of clouds streaming on in. Too many for my liking. Of course, they'll thicken up tonight. If it doesn't snow, I'll be lucky.
Well, this is it. The top of the ridge.
Whoa,
the end of the
still a little
line.
slippery.
There's too much snow and not enough day left to go anymore. We'll have to meet Summit Chief on a summer stroll.
At least we didn't have to fight the crowd.
This is the kxly expedition for supper on top of Little Annapurna.
I'm pumping up my stove to have dinner on the top of Little Annapurna.
Black bean soup.
For the elevation, that's feet, not meters.
You know, this will be good for the evening news. There it goes.
Well, a month ago, as I said, it was just totally green. I was here a month ago.